Jai Ma Kamakhya, Jai Ma Tara. Today I'm making this video on the right after the Vijaya Dasami. I hope everybody had a very fantastic 9 days of Navratri Upasana. As we all know already, that among the various Navratras that are there are four of them. This one is specifically the most important one, in my opinion, because it is in this period of time that two tremendously powerful dharmic events happened. One was Lord Rama defeating Ravana, as well as awakening the divine Shakti, the goddess Ranachandi, Kali, Durga, Chamunda. Slight differences in the mantras and forms, but essentially the fundamental Shakti, the power, the great goddess of war. So awakens her during the period of Dakshinayana so that the work of dharma, the work of destruction of negative forces of evil uh, is accomplished. It is because of these two things that as years progress, it is this specific period, this in the Sharad Ritu, the Navaratras, or the whether the 16-day Upasana or the 4-day Upasana, or any length of time in this phase that is used for Devi Upasana, has gained tremendous importance, because it is in this phase that there's a huge celestial event that happens, and a tremendous amount of power is available for any upasaka to change himself, to be able to receive some anugraha of the various forms of Devi Durga or the Divine Mother, and transform both his material as well as spiritual journey within certain limits of his destiny. So, because of this, invariably, the upasana that happens during the time of the Navaratras are going to be extremely prominent. It has already gained huge importance across India, and in the coming years and the decades, we will see that this will perhaps be the single most defining spiritual and religious event among the Hindus across India and across the world. This phase of Navratri during the when the Durga Upasana is possible, and because it is a time when the fierce form of the deity, fierce form of Durga, of Shakti, of Adi Shakti was awakened for a battle that happened in order to grant victory to Lord Rama. By the way, this does not come from the Ramayana, this comes from the Shakta Puranas and the Shakta texts, where this event is known as Akal Bodhan. Udbodhan means awakening, untimely awakening of the goddess, so that her blessings can be invoked for this great war that happened between Rama and Ravana. It is in this phase that not only Durga Upasana but also all types of uh, fierce deity sadhanas, whether it is Kali or any of the Mahavidyas or Chamunda, is, and in some cases even the yoginis, are very fruitfully and produce faster results compared to the Navratras that happened during the earlier parts of the year, because the energies are aligned in that way. And this also has something to do with the astrological combination of certain grahas, or the time when this upasana happens at that period of time. So it is more conducive in that manner. And for that reason, that whenever an upasaka individually performs the sadhanas in this period of time and consistently carries on doing that same upasana for a few years, because remember, the main thing of spirituality is to become consistent, and don't expect fast results, because if you are looking for quick results, quick transformation, then it's not going to happen, and if it happens, it won't last. Nothing substantial, nothing life changing can happen at a quick pace. It takes time. It takes time to work to the conditionings and the karmas of the individual and align them in a way so that he or she attains to a higher degree of spiritual consciousness. And that takes a minimum of 3 to 4 years of consistent upasana. consistent upasana. So anybody who has done these sadhanas that I mentioned uh, in the Navratra, and I received a lot of messages and mails from people saying that they have performed the sadhanas, and many had very blissful and intense and delightful experiences. This is only the anugraha of the Divine Mother, because at the end of the day, you realize that even the fact that you are able to do the sadhana, perform it without hindrance, and still attain to some form of a blissful experience is entirely governed by her. It is not your free will that that can take you to that result or conclusion. Those who have been doing Bhairava sadhana for at least a year or more than that and done few lakhs of the basic Nama Japa of Bhairava, it is a natural progression of Bhairava sadhana to finally get into some or the other form of Devi Upasana. It is a natural progression. It is like even if you take an individual who has no idea of Devi sadhana and you make him or her do Bhairava Upasana for at least a year or 2 years, and especially when there is a mass scale movement sort of Bhairav sadhana that is happening, very organically there are certain energies that will activate, which will lead the individual into Devi Upasana. Now, which form of the Devi may differ? For Bhairava, Kali, Chamunda are some of the forms that very naturally gel with Bhairava's energy, but also one can worship Durga, one can worship Tara, in fact, one can worship Tripur Sundari also. So it changes the energy a bit of Bhairava that has already been built as a foundational base. Uh, but it's fine. All these energies, whenever there is a Shakti Upasana, when there is a platform of Bhairava Upasana on which there is a transition into Shakti Upasana, then it produces very tivra and very fast and very beautiful results in the life of the Upasana. Then somebody doing straight away the Devi Upasana, which is also fine, but will take larger time. All things being constant, will take some more time and some more effort before it produces active results. So the key here is that those who have enjoyed the sadhanas, and some of them asked whether they can continue this in their Nitya Upasana, definitely you can do that. Whether it is the 2 lines of the Argala Stotram or the 32 names of Durga, you can incorporate that into your Nitya Upasana. And again, when there is a phase of 9 days, any of the Navratras that come, or next year or before that, any of the Navratras, and you have no other pending sadhana, you can repeat this again. The more times it is repeated, uh, the greater is the experience and the contact with the energy of the Divine Mother of that specific form that will happen for the Upasaka. I had a very intense and blissful time in this phase. It was wonderful experience. I could complete some sadhanas which I had in mind. I will be addressing a few questions that have come repeatedly from people. Not all, but kind of 4 or 5 of them that have come in, and we'll see if that helps. These are questions that have come from a lot of people, so I'm picking a few of them which are very common so that it gets addressed for everybody who is hearing this video. One of the first questions that comes, is I've written down the questions here. One of the first questions is that if somebody is doing Nitya Upasana and there are multiple deities or mantras that they are doing, should they be doing Achman and Samarpan every time? It's very simple. When you start the sadhana, any sadhana, you have to first do Achman, because it's a simplest method of self-purification. Okay, so there are complicated methods, but we stick to the basic first level of method of self-purification. Samarpan is, once your japa is over, you have to dedicate this japa to either the deity that you are worshipping or to your guru. Samarpan has to be done after every mantra that you do. Every mantra means, suppose you are chanting Bhairava mantra, then once that is completed, you do Samarpan of the mantra. Then suppose next you are chanting some Durga mantra, so once you complete the Durga mantra, then you do Samarpan of the mantra. Next, say you also do a little bit of, say, 10 times Krishna mantra or something. I'm just randomly saying. That also you have to do Samarpan. So Samarpan is to be done for every mantra, every puja, or every religious spiritual activity that you are doing in your daily upasana. Okay, it should become like a default thing. You don't need to ask this. Anytime you are expanding your sadhana, you are incorporating something new, you will have to add the samarpan to it. Achman you can do right at the beginning once and carry on with it. Every time you sit in your asana, you have to start with an achman first thing before doing anything else. So next question is, what kind of tilak should be applied during Bhairav sadhana? It's actually quite simple. The best thing to apply for any Shaiva deity and specifically for Bhairava is Vibhuti. It's the one thing he loves even more than offerings of sanctified alcohol, which is done in the Bhairava temples across India. But he loves that. But even more powerful than that is to the Vibhuti, the holy ash that is offered, specifically prepared and offered to Bhairava, that produces a tremendous effect on the sadhak and has a huge spiritual power in it. So when you're doing Bhairav sadhana, you have to put, it's very ideal, advised in fact, to put a tripunda mark with vibhuti on your forehead. On that you might put, it depends, there's no specific fixed tilaka that you can do, but tripunda, the application of vibhuti is very conducive for Bhairav sadhana. Along with that, you might even put a red dot as a tika. Okay, the representation of Shakti is there. That should be good enough. Depending on if there are people who do more Shaiva Upasana, then applying of Ashtagandha Chandan again in the Tripunda format is very good. It keeps your head cool when you are doing a lot of mantra sadhana. But basic thing is that Vibhuti is the one non-negotiable thing to be applied if you are doing Bhairav sadhana, and that's just the forehead. There are some sadhanas of Bhairava where Vibhuti has to be applied across the body and set. Okay. So next question is it right to carry and place Vatuk Bhairava Yantra we worship at home whenever we go out of station? So this is a question. If you have a yantra of Vatuka Bhairava or any deity for that matter, whenever the yantra is being given to you, you have to know what to do and what not to do. You have to ask that individual from, or whoever is giving you the yantra, you have to get the rules clarified by that individual about what needs to be done. In the ideal circumstance, if you have a yantra, if you're worshipping that yantra regularly, you should be carrying that yantra and doing some seva to the yantra wherever you are going, irrespective. So that is why keeping of yantras, keeping of murtis of deities is an additional responsibility, and it should only be taken up by those who can fulfill those responsibilities. So it is not like you create a museum into your, your puja space into a museum where all sorts of things, whatever comes in, you keep there, but you don't have the time or the energy or the inclination to do actual seva to those. So it becomes like a kind of a mess, all sorts of energies. So instead of doing that, choose only those things for which you have the time and you have the bandwidth to actually do some kind of practice related to it. And number two, when you're traveling, you must either have somebody else doing the puja for you, or you yourself have to carry the yantra. So this is the way it is to be done when yantra upasana is to be done. There are shorter yantra upasanas also, by the way, where one may have a yantra of a deity and may worship it for a specific period of time, say 21 days, 40 days, 48 days. And after that, the visarjan of the yantra is done on a flowing water. That's a one-time activity. But if you are keeping a yantra for your whole life or for long periods of time, you must know how to do seva of the yantra. It's important to do that. Next question is there. So is there a difference between Tantra Diksha and Mantra Diksha? I want to go and get more concentrated japa of Vaduk Bhairava. Is it a tantric practice or a mantra practice? Okay. So when Tantra Diksha and Mantra Diksha, this question comes in, it's because it is assumed that mantra is something different and Tantra is some more kriya based activity. No. So these are very intricately linked. Tantra and mantra are very tightly linked. Bhairava himself is a tantric deity. Vatuka Bhairava definitely is a tantric deity because his upasana is very prominent in the Sri Vidyas, some of the Sri Vidya schools and various other tantric schools, even for, in some sampradayas for the worship of Kali and worship of Durga, Vatuka Bhairava upasana is considered as a base. It activates the results and the blessings from the other deities much faster if somebody has some anugraha of Vatuka Bhairava. It's the belief. So it is definitely a tantric upasana. Now the question is, what is the difference between a tantra marg and a mantra marg? It is not two different things. Tantra includes mantras. It is not something different. Along with mantras, do not bifurcate tantra into, is it tantra versus mantra? No. Tantra is like a circle within which there is mantra, there is kriyas, there is puja, there is various other things included into it. Okay. So it is not that tantra and mantra are two separate things. Now, when it comes to diksha, there are few processes. Now, these days in India, everywhere there is tantra diksha. It's actually quite easy. There are cases where people take diksha even online also, and each sampradaya has innumerable number of disciples. So half the time they are not even aware how many disciples are there and what they're doing. So that's what the unfortunate reality is, because neither is the testing of disciples done thoroughly, neither does the disciple test the guru thoroughly, or has the competency to test, to be honest. Leave that aside, but yes, diksha is important, there's no doubt about it. And there are certain changes in the methods of diksha that happen in certain sampradayas, and I'm talking from a practical point of view. Ideally, a proper diksha, before a diksha, the guru is supposed to give the upadesham of the mantra. Upadesham is what? An advice wherein the guru may suggest a mantra to a specific aspirant, an upasaka, and ask him or her to chant the mantra for a few months. And once that is done, then looking at the signs, looking at what kind of experiences happen. And this entirely depends on the guru, his capability, his competency. He can decide whether it's for 1 month or 3 months or 6 months or even for 10 days, by which he can figure out whether this is the right mantra for the individual or not, or the right deity. And then they may proceed to an actual diksha. An actual diksha of tantra is mostly what is known as an abhishek diksha, shakta abhishek, where the individual is asked, there are certain pujas done basically by the guru, and in which and at the end of the puja there will be homa and various other things. The aim of the puja is that there is an ishta mantra that is given to the sadhak, and that he may be allowed to do upasana of the ishta mantra without any hindrances. So that is why this puja has to be done, and that puja will require homa and various other activities. At the end there will also be an abhishekam, which is that there is some sanctified holy water through which it's sprinkled on the forehead, on the head of the person who is taking diksha, along with certain mantras, where it is invoked blessings of all the various kinds of Bhairavas and the yoginis and the Mahavidyas of the Kula and various other things. So that is the most authentic of all Tantra Diksha that happens. It is called the Shakta Vishek. There are many sampradayas where this does not happen nowadays, so they just give a mantra. There are people sitting down and they'll just have a formal I don't know, maybe a puja or not even that. The guru may just give out the mantra like that, and that is taken as a diksha also in some sampradayas. But authentically speaking, the best diksha is the Shaktabhishek diksha for Tantra sadhana, and it is in fact mentioned in certain tantras that for Mahavidya upasana this is kind of a mandatory thing, Shaktabhishek. Now, where to find a guru, where to find a sampradaya, that is all the upasaka's job to do. There is no shortcut, easy way. Neither is there a perfect guru, nor there a perfect disciple, nor a perfect sampradaya. You have to take things on faith. And however, it's absolutely mandatory to mention that without the Tantra Diksha, performing of Mahavidya mantras and other things can be risky. There is absolutely no doubt, especially if somebody just on their own picks up a mantra and does without any kind of mentoring, without any kind of individual giving an advice who is competent to give the advice. So where does this competency come in? The competency comes in through two, technically it comes in either the guru can give the mantra upadesham, or any upasaka who has a Purnabhishek Diksha in Tantra, which is a little higher Diksha than the Shakta Abhishek, which is kind of the next stage in in most Sampradayas. So once an individual has a Purnabhishek Diksha in Tantra, he or she is given a new name, a new Gotra, and this name and Gotra is kept Uh, these days everybody makes it public, but ideally it should be kept kind of hidden and used only when there is a tantra puja that is happening. At that time, that individual uses his tantric name and the tantric gotra. For every other purposes, for your normal Aadhaar card to anything else, it's your normal name that goes on. So that kind of an individual who has a Purnabhishek Diksha is authorized to give mantra upadesh, even Diksha, to other people. That is the dictum of the Tantras. Purnabhishek is ideal. In the ideal condition, it is like after the Purnabhishek, an individual is like an avadhut, a Gupta avadhut, a hidden avadhut who stays in society, interacts with everybody, does all the other activities, but internally he has reached the condition of near liberation. This is the definition of somebody who has all things being taken in the ideal condition. Reality is slightly different, but in the ideal condition, when a person reaches the state where he is capable or competent enough to take a Purnabhishek Diksha, or is given a Purnabhishek Diksha, he is like a hidden avadhut, and he has the authority from the Tantras to give mantra upadesh or even Diksha to anybody. This is how it goes technically. But so far as Vatuk Bhairava Upasana is concerned, Bhairava Upasana is concerned, it is fine if you consider somebody's Upadesham or advice, and if you have followed certain guidelines, with that to carry on the mantra japa of Vatuk Bhairava. More or less in large parts of India, when Bhairava sadhana is done, the strict Shaktabhishek or Purnabhishek krama is not followed. There are many sampradayas where slightly lesser, or how would I put it, not lesser exactly, but more relaxed format of Diksha is given. Or even in some cases, an Upadesham can be given on Bhairava mantras, and if there is a competency in the Upasaka, and he or she may continue based on that. In fact, my first mantra of Bhairava that I received from my first guru was more like an Upadesha than a Diksha, but it worked very well. It produced fantastic results at a quick pace for me, because he had the competency to see what would gel with me, what was necessary for me. So this competency is important to have, to know that what is the right mantra to be given. So if the confusion is there in individual, that can they do mantra japa Vatuka Bhairava, do they need specific diksha? It is fine if you have diksha, but if you do not have diksha, and if you have an inclination towards Bhairava and Devi Upasana, etc., and you have been doing, at least in the videos that I have mentioned, so you have been doing certain amount of the basic Bhairava Nama Japa, and it has gelled with you. It has gelled with most people, in fact. By now, from the trends that I've seen, almost 80% people have found it to be extremely beneficial, which I think is a very high number, and that I attribute entirely to the blessings of Lord Bhairava. So if that has been done, and you want to shift to Vatuka Bhairava, then it is a very good transition, and you don't need to seek any further permission from anybody. You can carry on the Vatuka Bhairava mantra japa, and as you go deeper into the mantra japa through the anushtans and repeat after that, you will have guidances that will come to you. You will know what is the way to do an anushtan, what is the way to do a homa of Vatuka Bhairava, how to complete the full process of Vatuka sadhana. So tantras, again coming to a little technical point, Tantra specifically mentioned that when doing Mahavidya sadhanas and Mahavidya, the core mantras of Mahavidya, okay, and the higher mantras of Mahavidya, then Shaktavishek is a good thing to do. However, when you are doing Upasana of Shaiva deities, Shiva, Bhairava, or even Ganpati, or even other deities, it is not mandatory to have a Shaktavishek. It is good to have a Diksha. It is good to have an Abhishek, to have any form of the Diksha from any Guru or an Upadesham from a Guru. But Shaktavishek is not absolutely mandatory when it comes to other deities. It is made mandatory in the case of the Mahavidyas, the 10 Mahavidyas. Okay. So I hope I have not confused you and you understood what I'm trying to say. So you can carry on the practice without bothering too much about whether you have a diksha or not. So far as Vatuka Bhairava is concerned, if you have been following the krama that I have mentioned. Next question is, there is a Bhairav sadhak who is doing sadhana of XYZ, some form of Bhairava, can he initiate me into Vatuka Bhairava? Of course, if there is so it's the idea is not that I worship X deity so I can initiate onto that specific form of Bhairava. In fact, as I just mentioned in my previous answer, somebody, suppose in the tantric format, tantric formal tantropasana paddhatis, Somebody who has a Purnabhishek Diksha has the adhikara to initiate anybody into any of the mantras of any deity. He can give you even a Krishna mantra or Rama mantra. So that is the authority that is bestowed, the adhikara that is bestowed on an individual. Same way, taking an a clue from there, somebody who has advanced very highly in the upasana of a specific form of Bhairava, uh, assuming that the person has actually progressed, of course he or she has the adhikara to give upadesham on other forms of Bhairava also. So apart from this is neither a recommendation for nor recommendation against anything. I'm just giving a basic idea of how the principle works. The rest, you figure out on your own whether any individual is fit for you as a guru or not, because it's important to understand that there may be the same deity being worshipped by multiple people, and yet each one will have slight individualized differences in the way they approach the deity, their own personal traits that will also come in. So this is how the world of spirituality is. Once you understand that, then you find out what is the kind of guru that is most suitable for you, and whether the guru is ready to accept you as a disciple. It's a two-way process. It's not just you having an idea that I want XYZ as my guru, but that individual may not want you as a disciple. Then it won't work. So that all these things, it's for the individual to figure out. Next question. Okay, so there are one individual has mentioned that he has faced certain health issues, certain obstacles while when he started sadhana. So this is something that few people mention once in a while, that they find obstacles. Now you have to understand few things here. Number one, number two is, first is that sometimes these obstacles may be due to a result of the karmas and grahas that are anyway transiting and passing through an individual's horoscope. Once the grahas change, it is bound to cause some kind of problem. So that has to be eliminated first by analysis through a competent individual who knows Jyotisha. First step. Number two, second step is that sometimes if a strong diksha has been ceremony has been performed, or sometimes it happens that once an individual enters into the upasana of a deity and the individual already is kind of already, let's say, high up, in the sense has already performed some depth of sadhana, whether in this or in past lives, it is possible that initially certain amount of karmas are removed by the deity, and when those things happen, then it may feel little stressful, because removal of karmas is what the deity does is that, suppose when he or she wants somebody to have a specific kind of spiritual uplift or growth, and what exactly is it that blocks the growth? It is because our own karmas are blocking the growth. So in order to remove the karmas, there is no foolproof method by which they will just do a magic and your karmas are going to vanish. No. So what they will do is, instead of spreading the karmas that you might have experienced over 10 years, 15 years or something like that, they may say that instead of going through all that, let the karmas of that individual be accumulated in a shorter period of time, at a lesser intensity, say for 6 months or 1 year or something like that, or some small period of time, and let those be finished off so that he or she can reach the next stage quicker. So this is also a phenomenon that happens. But this happens only in the case of souls who are more already advanced due to sadhanas they might have done in past life, or they are at the end of their spiritual journey, which means you have reached a very high state of sadhana and you are about to reach one of the very intense experiences, very transformative states where you are in close contact with the deity, or where you are reaching siddhi, and here siddhi is accomplishment of the highest states. Then there is a release of various kinds of karmas from your subtle body that will be done. Karmas that might have been performed at many past lives, or karmas that may have been performed by the kula, the family in which he or she is born in past. So all those have to be resolved completely before an individual is allowed by nature and the deities to reach to a very high condition. So that is also a possibility, but that is rare. That only happens in people who have done quite a bit of sadhana, and you can already make out whether you are absolutely new to this or whether you have done a lot of sadhana. Now, for people who have done a lot of sadhana, whose souls are very advanced, when they face difficulties in sadhana, well, obviously nobody likes difficulties, nobody likes um, bad conditions coming to them. When they face difficulties or these kind of things, they still carry on the sadhana. There is no question that they will stop the sadhana, because they realize that every time they do the sadhana, this difficulties, whatever it is, it's like a set of karmas that have come, their own doings, karmas, reactive karmas from their own activities that they might have performed, and by the process of sadhana, they are eliminating, removing, cleansing those karmas so that the consciousness becomes pure enough to have a direct experience with deity. So they are kind of those people who are ready to walk on fire, walk through those so called negative experiences so that they reach a higher condition. Then there is the other section of people who, as I mentioned, number one, that once they start sadhana, they face some obstacles and difficulties. It is not a very common phenomenon. I would put it as about 5 to 10% people who face that, others do not face it. This is more or less because there are certain graha activities. It's possible that coincidentally you start the sadhana at a time when there is some negative dasha that has started or negative transit that is going on. So it is like that if you had not done the upasana, then too it would have caused some of the other problems. So to find the link that because I'm doing sadhana, therefore it has caused some negative effect, while the mind likes to make those correlations, one has to be very careful in reaching such a conclusion, because unless you know how to thoroughly eliminate all other possibilities, you cannot suddenly come to the conclusion that a certain negative result has been brought forth due to the result of XYZ upasana. So that is why it is important that one has a clear mind and understanding. And secondly, the other thing is that if a specific sadhana is meant to is sort of causes a negative reaction in one individual, uh, it is good to have a detached view and ask, is this sadhana also causing negative reaction in a lot of other individuals? If it happens multiple cases, you know for a fact that there is something wrong. Perhaps the sadhana is not right for people, it's not the right deity for masses, something like that. Whereas if you see that for a good number of people, majority of the people, it has not caused anything negative, it has been brought forth, it has built up a certain strength, stamina, depth, and the positive outcomes that we look for has come to them, and only in the case of one individual or two individuals there is some negative reaction that has happened, then it is likely that it could be due to the results of grahas or other karmas that the individual already has, which may have caused this reaction. So therefore it's important that one analyzes these things with a very calm mind before jumping to any conclusions, and also to have the mind very clear, because remember this thing, if your mind is not clear, if your mind has doubts about a sadhana that you are doing, then the mind itself is going to spoil the sadhana. You cannot enter into not just an upasana, for any practice, whether it's a job, whether it's something else in life, whether it's a thing as simple as shifting a house. If your mind is not clear about an activity, then your mind itself can turn into an enemy for that activity and completely spoil the uh, result that you would expect. So keep these in mind. I hope these answers will help few people at least who had put forth these questions. So once in a while I will be gathering few questions that come up from the Telegram group, and that are sent to me through mails, and like this I'll come on a video and try and resolve a few of those questions, so it's helpful for you. So carry on sadhana. That's all. Jai Mata Tara.